Hello, my name is Evelyn, and I'm 34 years old. Most people who meet me today only see the uniform, the ribbons, the sharply drawn lines of authority on my shoulders, and the calm, almost cold discipline in my voice. They see a four-star general of the United States Armed Forces, someone who walks through command halls where every conversation lowers in volume, someone whose clearance level exists behind sealed doors and coded locks, someone who doesn't flinch even when the entire world seems to shake. But no one ever asks where that calm came from or what it cost me. I didn't grow up in a military family. I wasn't raised on bases, nor did I have parents who saluted flags at sunrise or taught me how to march before I could walk. I grew up in a small Midwestern town where the loudest noise was a passing train, and the biggest conflict was usually a neighbor's dog digging up someone's rose garden. My parents, Janet and Frank, were simple people, hard workers but emotionally distant, the kind of parents who provided everything a child needed except warmth. And my younger sister, Sabrina, well, she was always the shining star in their eyes. The daughter who brought home trophies, who spoke loudly, who demanded attention, who needed to be seen. They liked that about her. I was the opposite, quiet, observant, reserved. Even as a child, I understood things without being told. I saw the cracks in people, the hidden patterns in behavior, the way truth hides behind smiles. I didn't know it then, but that ability would someday become my deadliest weapon. When I turned 18, I enlisted. I left home without a dramatic goodbye, without a tearful hug, without anyone telling me they would miss me. I simply packed a duffel bag, walked out the front door, and never looked back. In a strange way, the army felt more like home than my own family ever did. The discipline made sense to me. The structure felt honest. People said what they meant, and you learned quickly who you could trust. There was no favoritism, no jealousy, no silent competition, only performance, loyalty, and duty. Within my first 3 years, I climbed faster than anyone anticipated. I didn't talk much, but I listened to everything. My instructors said I had a gift, an ability to read a situation before it unfolded. Soon, I was transferred out of standard units and into specialized intelligence training. Overnight, my world shifted from ordinary drills to encrypted messages, undercover operations, and missions that would never appear in history books. By the time I was 29, I was entrusted with classified operations overseas, covert extractions, counterintelligence missions, and command decisions that determined the fate of entire regions. And somewhere along that brutal climb, I learned to teach my heart how to stay silent. Feelings were luxuries. Discipline was survival. Now, at 34, my days start before sunrise on a secure military base most Americans don't even know exists. I walk past reinforced doors guarded by biometric scanners. I enter rooms where maps glow under dim lights and satellite feeds shift like restless ghosts across digital screens. I supervise intelligence teams who monitor threats before they become headlines, who track whispers before they turn into wars. My position requires silence, precision, and steel-like composure. Some people break under this much responsibility, but I breathe in it. Still, with all the pressure, all the danger, all the classified operations I've survived, there's one thing the military never trained me for: family. No manual tells you how to deal with a mother who thinks you exaggerated your success, or a father who never once asked what your rank is, or a sister who believes the world revolves around her badge. For years, I thought distance would fix everything. I thought success would silence their doubts. I thought maybe, just maybe, one day they would be proud. Instead, silence grew into assumptions. Assumptions became resentment, and resentment turned into something far uglier. I didn't know it then, but a storm was already building back home, one that would test me in ways no battlefield ever had. Because you can prepare for war, but nothing prepares you for betrayal from the people who share your blood. Families are supposed to be the one place where you can rest without armor, where you can breathe without weighing every word, where you can be vulnerable without fear of being judged. But my family was never that for me, not even in the earliest memories I have. If anything, home was where I learned my first lessons about silence, restraint, and pretending everything was fine. My mother, Janet, wasn't a cruel woman, just emotionally distant. She carried herself like someone permanently disappointed, always expecting more but never saying it directly. My father, Frank, was quieter, but not in the gentle way some fathers are. His silence was heavy, like a locked door you never had permission to open. He worked long hours, came home tired, and spoke mostly in short, practical sentences. Dinner's on the table. Don't stay up late. Sabrina has school early. Never anything personal. Never anything that made me feel seen. And then there was Sabrina. If you'd met us as children, you would have thought she was the older sister.
Confident, loud, charismatic.
Always wanting attention and always getting it. She was the kind of girl who entered a room like it belonged to her and left only when she was satisfied that everyone had noticed her. Teachers adore her. Neighbors praised her. My parents practically revolved their world around her achievements. I, on the other hand, lived in the spaces between conversations. I was quieter, more observant. I liked books, strategy games, puzzles, anything that required focus. I didn't shine the way Sabrina did, not in the loud, obvious way she liked to. And for my parents, that just wasn't enough. Growing up, I learned early that the only way to avoid fights or criticism was to stay out of the way. So I did. I kept my voice low, kept my emotions tucked away, kept my ambitions to myself. But no matter how small I tried to make myself, Sabrina still saw me as competition. Not because I wanted the spotlight, but because she couldn't stand the idea of sharing it. She was always comparing, always measuring, always making sure she stayed one step ahead. If I got an A on a test, she needed an A+. If I learned to play an instrument, she needed to perform on stage. If I mastered something quietly, she needed to make it loud. Our parents encouraged that dynamic without realizing it, praising her for everything, ignoring my quiet successes as though they were accidents. They didn't mean harm, but intent doesn't erase impact. And the impact was deep. As we grew older, the gap between us widened. I became even quieter, and Sabrina became even louder. She thrived in attention, and I learned to thrive in solitude. When I enlisted at 18, I didn't tell anyone until the paperwork was already done. I remember the moment vividly. Janet setting the dinner table, Frank reading the newspaper, Sabrina talking about some award ceremony at school. I told them I had signed enlistment papers. They didn't react the way I had imagined. No shock, no pride, no concern, just indifference. Sabrina smirked and said, "You? In the army? You won't last a month." And my mother simply sighed, as if I had made another predictable mistake. That was the day I stopped hoping for their approval. But here's the thing about jealousy. It doesn't disappear when the person you resent leaves. Sometimes it grows in the empty space they left behind. As the years passed and my career advanced, as my missions became classified and my rank grew higher, I think Sabrina's jealousy turned into something darker. She hated not knowing what I was doing. She hated not being able to compare herself to me anymore. She hated that my silence was louder than her achievements. And when she became police chief in our small hometown, her dream title, her badge, her stage, I think she expected me to applaud her, to validate her. But I didn't. Not because I didn't care, but because she had pushed me so far out of the family that I no longer felt connected to their world. I didn't know it then, but Sabrina wasn't just jealous anymore. She was building a story about me, one where she was the hero and I was the fraud. A story she planned to reveal in the worst way possible. It was a Wednesday evening when everything began to shift, quietly, almost innocently, the way storms often do before they rip the sky open. I had just finished a 12-hour briefing cycle inside one of our secured intelligence facilities. My mind was heavy with classified reports, satellite scans, intercepted transmissions, the kind of information that shapes the safety of a nation long before anyone ever hears about it. I was walking toward my quarters when a young officer approached me with a sealed envelope in his hand. A physical letter. It was so unusual that I almost frowned. In my world, everything was digital, encrypted, and trackable. No one sent paper letters, not to someone with my rank, and certainly not to a restricted base address. "Ma'am, this arrived for you through civilian mail channels," he said, standing at attention. Civilian mail. That alone made my stomach tighten. I took the envelope, dismissed the officer, and stepped into my quarters. The moment the door locked behind me, I felt the air shift. My instincts, the same instincts that had saved my life more times than I could count, were already alert. The envelope had no warmth to it. No handwriting from someone who missed me. No return address. Just a neat, cold printing of my name. Evelyn. I slid my thumb under the flap and opened it. Inside was a single sheet of faded cream paper. The handwriting was familiar, tight, controlled, slightly tilted. My sister's handwriting. Sabrina's. The message was short, almost painfully formal. Family dinner this Sunday. 6 p.m. Everyone expected. Sabrina. No, hope you're well. No, we miss you. No, it's been years since we've seen you. Just an order disguised as an invitation. For a moment, I just stared at the page. The last time I had spoken to Sabrina had been nearly 5 years ago, and even that conversation had ended in a strained silence that felt colder than winter pavement. We weren't close. We never had been. And my parents, well, they had settled comfortably into the habit of pretending I didn't exist unless someone asked about me. So why now? Why a dinner? Why a letter? Why suddenly? The entire thing felt off. Not emotional. Not sincere. Not like family trying to reconnect, but like someone setting the stage for something. I set the letter down and exhaled slowly. When you spend your life in intelligence, you learn that nothing is ever just a coincidence. Especially not when it comes from someone who has spent her whole life competing with you. Especially not from a police chief who thrives on control and attention. A part of me wanted to ignore the invitation, throw the letter away, pretend it never arrived, and return to my world of strategic plans and encrypted briefings. My life was safer there, emotionally at least. But another part of me, the part that still carried a small ache from years of silent rejection, wanted to see what this was about. Wanted to prove to myself that I wasn't running from them. Wanted to look Sabrina in the eyes and show her that her words couldn't shake me anymore. More importantly, my instincts whispered something unsettling.
Go.
Something is waiting there. In intelligence work, you never ignore intuition. Not when it tightens in your chest like that. Not when it comes wrapped in a feeling that danger is close, but not in the usual way. I folded the letter again and held it for a moment, the paper thin and almost trembling between my fingers. Whatever was about to happen, I could feel it already. A storm was coming, and I was walking straight into it. Sunday arrived with a kind of gray, heavy sky that feels like it's warning you to turn back. I drove into my hometown just after sunset, the streets quiet, the houses small and familiar in a way that made my chest tighten. Nothing had changed here. Same narrow roads. Same cracked sidewalks. Same porch lights glowing like tired fireflies. But I had changed. More than anyone in that house could ever understand. When I pulled into the driveway of my parents' home, the lights inside were already on. The windows glowed warmly, but there was no warmth behind them. Not for me. As I stepped out of the car, the air felt unnaturally still, as though the house itself was holding its breath. I walked up the porch steps, hesitated for a moment, then knocked. Janet opened the door. My mother looked almost exactly the same, tightly tied hair, pressed blouse, that permanent expression of slight disappointment resting on her face like a shadow. She didn't smile, didn't hug me, didn't even seem surprised. "Come in," she said simply, as if I were a neighbor dropping off a borrowed dish. Inside, the living room was filled with soft murmurs and the clinking of silverware. Sabrina's voice echoed from the dining room. Loud, confident, commanding, exactly as I remembered. I stepped inside and took in the room. My father, Frank, sat at the far end of the table, hands folded, expression unreadable. A few extended family members I hardly recognized were present too, chatting quietly. When Sabrina finally saw me, she stopped mid-sentence. She looked satisfied. Not happy. Not relieved. Just satisfied, like someone whose plan had just fallen perfectly into place. "Well," she said loudly, "look who finally decided to show up." Her tone made several guests glance awkwardly between us. I kept my posture steady, shoulders back, expression calm. "Good to see you too, Sabrina," I replied. She smirked. "Let's eat." The dinner was uncomfortable, to say the least. People asked me small, superficial questions. How was work? Was I still in the military? Did I enjoy traveling? They ask them the way people do when they don't actually care about the answer, but want to pretend they're polite. Not one person said they were proud. Not one asked what I actually did. No one even tried to bridge the years between us. I shouldn't have expected anything different. Halfway through dinner, I noticed Sabrina whispering to a man I didn't recognize. Blonde hair, stiff posture, a cheap suit that didn't fit him well, someone who wanted to look important but didn't quite succeed. His eyes kept flicking toward me with a look that made my instincts prickle. As dessert was set on the table, Sabrina cleared her throat dramatically, tapping her spoon against her glass. "Everyone," she said, "I need your attention." Something in her voice made the room fall silent. She stood, straightened her police chief uniform, and looked at me with a triumphant, almost predatory smile. "Evelyn," she began loudly, "I've been doing some digging. And it turns out you've been lying to all of us for years." I blinked slowly, expression still calm. "What are you talking about?" Sabrina motioned toward the blonde man. "This is Jack, a private investigator. And he's uncovered something you won't be able to talk your way out of." Jack stepped forward and opened a briefcase with theatrical flair. Papers. Copies of what looked like military documents. Photographs. Signatures. Report headers. All arranged like a prosecutor preparing for trial. My parents leaned forward, confused. The guests murmured. Sabrina's voice rang out, sharp as a siren. "You're not a real general, Evelyn. You forged your military records. You falsified your promotions. You've been stealing federal money through a fake identity." There was a collective gasp. My mother covered her mouth. My father's eyes widened in disbelief. But not one person stood up for me. Not one said, "This doesn't sound right." Not one asked for proof before assuming the worst. They were ready, desperate even, to believe I was a fraud. Jack spread the documents across the table like evidence at a crime scene. "All of these," he said confidently, "prove Evelyn has been lying to you and to the government." And then I recognized something crucial. The seals were wrong. The formatting was off. The signatures weren't real. My stomach twisted, not out of fear, but out of the sheer absurdity of it. Sabrina straightened proudly. "I'm placing you under arrest for federal fraud and military impersonation." As she approached me with handcuffs in her hand, my mother whispered, "Evelyn, how could you?" That hurt more than anything. More than Sabrina's accusations. More than the forged documents. More than being humiliated in a room full of people. Because in that moment, I realized something with painful clarity. They had always believed the worst about me. They had been waiting for me to fall. I lifted my chin, gave Sabrina a cold, steady look, and without saying a word, pressed a silent emergency signal against my wrist. A signal only one kind of team in the world would recognize. A signal that would change everything. The room felt too small, the air too thick, as Sabrina stepped toward me with the handcuffs. The metallic click echoed through the dining room like a cold verdict. Every pair of eyes fixed on me, not with concern, not with confusion, but with a hunger for scandal. My own family waiting to see me fall. Sabrina stood just inches away, chin lifted, pride practically radiating off her. She wanted this moment. She had built it, rehearsed it, savored it even before it happened. Her voice rang out, sharp, authoritative, and dripping with satisfaction. "Stand up, Evelyn," she ordered. "You're under arrest for federal fraud and impersonation of a United States military officer." My parents didn't protest. They didn't ask for proof. My mother, Janet, looked genuinely wounded, as if I had personally betrayed her. My father looked away, unable to meet my eyes. It didn't matter that they knew nothing about my real work, my real rank, or my real life. They didn't need facts. They already had a story. Sabrina's story. I stood slowly, my movements controlled, deliberate. Years of military discipline kept my breath steady, my posture unshaken. Inside, I wasn't panicking. I wasn't afraid. I was simply disappointed. Disappointed that after everything I had built, everything I had sacrificed for the safety of the very country they lived in, my own bloodline still chose the lie the moment it suited them. The relatives watched with whispered judgment as Sabrina grabbed my wrist and twisted it behind my back, not roughly, but firmly enough to humiliate. She snapped one cuff into place and leaned closer, whispering in my ear with a venom only siblings could brew. "Not so perfect now, huh?" she taunted. "Let's see how far your fake stories take you once you're exposed." I didn't respond. I didn't give her the satisfaction. The second cuff locked around my other wrist. My hands were now behind me, restrained, but my mind was sharper than ever. I kept reminding myself, stay calm.
Stay still.
Stay silent. The signal has been sent. Jack, the private investigator, watched proudly from the side, as if he had just solved a national conspiracy. He lifted his chin toward me. "You should have known better, Evelyn," he said smugly. "You can't fool the system." I almost laughed. If only he knew the real system I served. If only he knew how deeply I was woven into the country's hidden defenses. If only he knew what was coming. Sabrina turned me toward the door, announcing loudly, "We're taking her to the station for processing." She wanted an audience. She wanted applause. She wanted witnesses to her triumph. But the room stayed eerily silent. Not supportive silent. Not respectful silent. Just awkward, uncomfortable, self-protective silent. People were afraid to look at me. Afraid to get involved. Afraid of guilt by association. My mother finally found her voice. "Evelyn, why would you do something like this?" Her tone wasn't of a mother defending her daughter. It was the tone of someone who had already chosen a side. Mine wasn't it. That was the final cut. Sabrina nudged me toward the door, gripping my arm tightly. "Let's go, General," she mocked. Oh, wait, should I say pretend General? Even then, even in handcuffs, I kept my expression calm. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because I felt everything all at once. Betrayal, hurt, resignation, but above all, clarity. They had never believed in me. Sabrina had never stopped competing with me. And now she thought she had finally won. As she pushed open the front door, cold night air rushed in. I stepped out, looking straight ahead. Just then, far off in distance, I heard something. Not a siren. Not shouting. Not tires screeching. A low hum. Engines. Armored. Unmistakably federal. The kind of vehicles only one specific intelligence division uses. And the moment I heard them, a quiet, controlled breath escaped my chest. My backup was here. And Sabrina had no idea what storm she had just unleashed. Sabrina had just pushed me down the porch steps when the sound reached us, low, heavy, synchronized. Not police vehicles. Not local emergency units. These engines had a deeper vibration, a controlled hum that only one type of convoy in the United States uses. Federal. Highly trained. Highly classified. Highly selective about when they intervene. Sabrina froze for a second, her grip tightening on my arm. What is that?" she muttered under her breath, suddenly unsure. She looked down the street, her eyes narrowing as if trying to make sense of the approaching silhouettes. 3 black SUVs turned the corner with flawless precision. No flashing lights. No sirens. No chaos. Just silent authority. The kind that doesn't announce itself, it's simply understood. My heart didn't race. If anything, it steadied. Backup had arrived. The SUVs rolled to a stop in front of the house. Every door opened at the exact same moment. Smooth, coordinated, rehearsed. 6 agents stepped out, each dressed in tactical gear marked only by a small, discreet federal insignia, an emblem known by very few people in the country. But Sabrina recognized power when she saw it. And she suddenly realized she wasn't the most powerful person on this street anymore. "Hold it right there," she shouted, trying to regain control. "This is a local police operation. Who are you?" Her voice cracked on the last word. The lead agent didn't even look at her. He walked straight toward me. His expression wasn't hostile. wasn't confused, just focused, like a man arriving exactly where he was supposed to be. "General," he said to me in a firm, respectful tone, "are you hurt?" Sabrina's mouth fell open. My parents, who had followed us outside, stared in shock. I didn't answer the agent yet. Instead, I turned my head toward Sabrina. Her eyes were wide, flickering between me and the armed federal team like she was trying to convince herself this wasn't happening. Then the second vehicle's door opened, and out stepped Marcus. 3-star General Marcus. My direct superior. The man who briefed top-level intelligence committees. The man whose presence alone meant something catastrophic, or monumental, was unfolding. Sabrina gasped. "Gee, General." "Marcus?" she stammered, suddenly losing her confidence. Marcus didn't acknowledge her. He walked toward me with long, purposeful strides. When he reached us, he looked at my handcuffs, then at Sabrina, then back at me. "Who authorized this?" he demanded, his voice cold, cutting through the night like steel. Sabrina straightened, as if she still had authority. "I did." "She's under arrest for..." "For what?" Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice dangerously. "For being a decorated 4-star general? For leading classified intelligence units? For dedicating her life to protecting this country while you play police chief in a town with 2 stoplights." Sabrina blinked rapidly, stunned, speechless. My mother whispered, barely audible, "F 4-star?" Marcus turned to the federal agent. "Remove those cuffs. Now." The agent stepped behind me and unlocked them instantly. The weight lifted from my wrists, physically and symbolically. Marcus looked directly at Sabrina. "Chief Sabrina," he said sharply, "you have just committed multiple federal crimes. False accusations, evidence tampering, and interference with classified personnel." Her knees visibly wobbled. "This can't be, I didn't know. I thought she was lying." Sabrina stumbled over her words. Marcus cut her off. "You don't get to think when you fabricate evidence." Behind us, neighbors had begun to peek out of windows. The street had gone silent. Everyone watching, everyone realizing the truth. And then Marcus added the final blow. "Evelyn is not only a real general, she outranks every person on this street." The world around us seemed to stop. My parents stared at me, like seeing me for the first time in their lives. Sabrina stood frozen, the weight of her mistake finally sinking in. And I simply stood there calm, steady, finally unmasked. The storm had arrived, but it wasn't for me. It was for her. For a long moment, no one moved. The cold evening air seemed to freeze around us as every pair of eyes shifted between Marcus, the federal agents, and me, like they were trying to piece together a puzzle they never imagined could exist. I stood still, my wrists now free, but the sting from the cuffs remained, a reminder of everything that had just happened inside that house. Sabrina looked as if the ground beneath her was disappearing inch by inch. Her badge, her authority, her pride, everything she thought made her powerful, suddenly meant nothing in the shadow of the man standing in front of her. Marcus took one slow step forward, folding his hands behind his back, commanding the same reverence he carried in every war room and classified briefing across the country. "In case there is any confusion," he began, his voice sharp and unwavering, "let me make something absolutely clear." Every neighbor leaning out a window seemed to hold their breath. My parents stood frozen on the porch, shock etched into their features. "This woman, General Evelyn, is one of the highest-ranking intelligence officers in the United States Armed Forces. She is a 4-star general with full operational command of a classified division." The murmurs that followed were faint but stunned. My mother covered her mouth. My father actually took a step back. And Sabrina looked like her spine had turned to water. Marcus wasn't finished. All of her military records, assignments, and promotions are sealed for national security purposes. That means no civilian, and certainly no local police official, is authorized to access, question, or investigate her service. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "So when he pointed directly at Sabrina, hired a private investigator to break into restricted systems and collect falsified documents, you didn't just make a mistake. You committed a serious federal offense." Jack, the private investigator, seemed to shrink behind Sabrina like a child hiding from a storm. I didn't know, he stammered. No, Marcus corrected him coldly. It didn't care to know. You wanted a paycheck. And he turned to Sabrina, wanted a story where she wasn't the lesser sister. Sabrina's face flushed with humiliation and panic. Her lips trembled as she struggled to find words. Evelyn lied, she whispered desperately. She never told us her rank. She never. You think a 4-star general walks around announcing her clearance level at dinner parties? Marcus snapped. You think classified intelligence officers log into public computers and share confidential assignments with relatives? Silence. Complete, devastating silence. He turned to my parents next, Janet and Frank, who stood as if chained in place. You should know, Marcus said more evenly. Your daughter has prevented attacks, dismantled networks, and commanded operations that most Americans never hear about. Her work has saved lives, American lives. Probably your own. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Not of pride, of shame. My father swallowed hard, realizing maybe for the first time that the quiet daughter he dismissed for years had risen far beyond anything he ever imagined. Marcus then faced me. General, he said formally, we apologize for this breach of protocol and for the disrespect you endured. I nodded, keeping my emotions buried deep. Thank you, sir. But inside, something stung harder than the humiliation Sabrina caused. My own family had needed a general, a man with 3 stars on his shoulder, to tell them who I was before they could believe in me. Not my words, not my character, not my years of silence and service. A stranger had to say it. Marcus turned to Sabrina once more, the final blow already sharpened. Chief Sabrina, he said in a tone colder than steel, you are hereby suspended from duty, effective immediately. Your badge will be confiscated. You will accompany us for questioning on charges of evidence tampering, unlawful access to protected information, and obstruction of federal operations. The federal agent beside him stepped forward and removed her badge, her symbol of authority, her pride, right off her uniform. Sabrina didn't fight. She didn't argue. She just stared at me, not with anger this time, not even with hate, but with the crushing realization that for the first time in her life, she had lost. Truly, completely, irrevocably lost. And I didn't have to lift a finger. All I did was tell the truth. And let the truth finally speak for itself. The days that followed were a blur of hearings, statements, and federal protocols. Everything moved fast, faster than Sabrina ever imagined when she set her trap. This time, she wasn't the one leading an investigation, she was the one being investigated. And the federal government does not move kindly when its classified systems are tampered with. I wasn't required to testify in detail. My assignments, my record, my rank were all sealed. But I did stand before the court in uniform, offering only the limited information the judge was cleared to hear. Judge Anderson presided over the case with the calm, stern authority of someone who had seen every form of deception, but the moment Sabrina's evidence was presented, even he looked disturbed. The forged documents Jack had created fell apart under scrutiny within hours. Digital traces showed unauthorized access attempts. Metadata proved timestamps had been altered. Several classified seals and signatures were proven counterfeit. Everything Sabrina thought would expose me instead exposed her. Jack tried to shift the blame. She told me to do it, he insisted, voice shaking. But intent didn't matter anymore. Both had crossed lines you don't come back from. The courtroom was full the day of sentencing. Not because my family came to support her, they didn't. They sat stiffly in the second row, still processing the shock of everything they learned. My mother looked older. My father looked ashamed. But neither said a word to me. I kept my gaze forward. I wasn't there for reconciliation. I wasn't there for closure. I was there because duty required it. When Sabrina entered the courtroom, she looked like a shadow of herself. Uniform gone, wrists cuffed, confidence stripped away. For the first time, she wasn't the loudest person in the room. She was silent. Judge Anderson glanced over the case file before speaking. Chief Sabrina, he said, You orchestrated a malicious attempt to fabricate crimes against a federal military officer. You falsified evidence, hired an investigator to tamper with classified systems, and attempted to interfere with national security operations. Sabrina's eyes locked onto mine, full of regret, fear, and something that looked almost like an apology she couldn't form. The judge continued, firm and unwavering. For these offenses, you are sentenced to 12 years in federal prison, with no possibility of early release. A quiet gasp rippled through the courtroom. My mother slumped forward as if her legs couldn't hold her. My father closed his eyes. Sabrina lowered her head, not fighting, not denying, not begging. The weight of her own choices had finally settled on her shoulders. As the bailiff escorted her out, she turned slightly, her voice barely audible. Evelyn, I'm sorry. For years I thought hearing those words would mean something.
But now,
They felt like too little, too late, spoken only because everything else was gone. I simply nodded once. Because forgiveness wasn't my duty.
justice was.
And justice had finally been served. The morning after the sentencing, I returned to base before the sun rose. The sky was still dark, a deep navy blue stretching quietly over the compound as the wind carried the familiar hum of security gates and distant engines. For the first time in days, everything around me felt steady, predictable, disciplined, honest. This was my world. This was where I belonged. As I walked through the reinforced doors of the command center, several officers nodded respectfully. No judgment. No confusion. No hesitation. Just recognition. Recognition of rank. Recognition of duty. Recognition of the woman they had always known me to be. Logan, the Federal Intelligence Team leader, met me in the hallway. "General," he said with a short nod, "it's good to have you back." I nodded back, grateful for his simple professionalism. No questions. No pity. Just readiness to move forward. My office awaited me, screens still glowing softly, mission files neatly arranged, reports blinking with new alerts. A map displayed shifting intelligence patterns across 3 continents. Threat levels pulsed in red and amber. Work that mattered. Work that saved lives. Work that demanded clarity and calm, not emotional chaos. I placed my uniform cap on the desk and exhaled slowly. The weight of everything that had happened settled into a quiet place inside me. Not gone, but contained. Controlled. Just like every other wound I had carried through my career. My family hadn't reached out. I didn't expect them to. Maybe they were still processing the truth. Maybe they were ashamed. Maybe they simply didn't know how to face the daughter they had underestimated for so many years. But for the first time, their silence didn't hurt. Because I no longer needed them to understand me. I sat down, straightened my shoulders, and opened the next classified briefing. Images loaded. Coordinates appeared. A new operation, a new mission, a new responsibility. Life didn't pause for betrayal. And neither did I. I wasn't defined by my family's doubt. I wasn't shaped by Sabrina's jealousy. I wasn't limited by the lies told about me. I was defined by my service. Shaped by my discipline. And strengthened by every battle, seen or unseen, I had survived. As the door quietly closed behind me, I felt nothing but certainty. I had returned to where I was meant to be. And this time, I walked forward with absolutely nothing left to prove. Thank you for listening to my story. If you connected with this journey, I would love for you to support the channel. Please make sure to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more powerful stories just like this one. Your support helps these stories reach more viewers around the world, and it truly means a lot. I'll see you in the next story.